that the cause, and in this video we'll be talking about air pollution. What are the things that pollute our environment, the atmosphere in this case, and how can we curb them? The first question is, what is air pollution? Air pollution is the indiscriminate discharge of harmful substances into the atmosphere. And these substances that are discharged into the atmosphere to pollute it, we call them air pollutants. Now, there are 7 categories of air pollutants. The substances that normally endanger our environment. Number 1 is oxides of carbon. Number 2, oxides of sulphur, oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter, heavy metal in the air, hydrocarbon, and chlorofluorocarbon. These are the 7 pollutants that normally affect our atmosphere and pollute it. Oxides of carbon, that's number 1. There are 2 major oxides of carbon. We have the carbon 4 oxide and the carbon 2 oxide. These 2 oxides of carbon affect our environment in different ways. For carbon 4 oxide, it normally enters into our atmosphere from burning of fuel, from combustion of fuel. Our fuel from our generator, fuel from our vehicles, fuel from burning firewood and coal produces carbon 4 oxide. And when they enter into our atmosphere, they cause a lot of harm. The question is, carbon 4 oxide in itself is not harmful, but why is it named as part of our air pollutant? Now, why is carbon 4 oxide air pollutant? Carbon 4 oxide is a greenhouse gas, that is, it has ability of causing a greenhouse effect. Now, what is greenhouse effect? Consider a room that is coated on the inside with green color. Look at this. The inside is coated with green color. Now, it can allow heat to enter, but because the inside is coated with green, the heat cannot be able to come out of that house because of the nature of the color of the paint. Now, what will happen is that as the heat is entering, the heat will be accumulating and the temperature of the room will become hot. That's what we call greenhouse effect. It increases the temperature of the room by trapping heat into the room and not allowing the heat to go out. Carbon 4 oxide is one of those gases that have ability to trap heat in our atmosphere. So you call carbon 4 oxide a greenhouse gas. Now, how does it work on a global scale? The heat coming from the sun, just like in a greenhouse, is supposed to enter our earth and leave our earth, or get radiated away from our earth, so that the temperature of the earth can be constant. But there are some gases called greenhouse gases inside earth that when they are present in excess, they are going to trap the heat from the sun and prevent them from leaving the earth. As you can see in the second picture here, the heat from the sun are being trapped by these greenhouse gases. Instead of the heat to leave our earth so that the temperature of the earth can remain constant, these gases trap the heat into the earth and prevent the heat from going out of the earth. What will happen? This will lead to a general increase in the temperature of the earth. And this has a lot of consequences for us as the inhabitants of the earth. Greenhouse gases. Number 1 example is carbon 4 oxide. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas. Methane is a greenhouse gas. Hydrocarbon. Chlorofluorocarbon is a greenhouse gas. Ozone gas is a greenhouse gas. But one of them that we're talking about is carbon dioxide. It causes greenhouse effect, a phenomenon whereby heat from the sun will be trapped in the earth, leading to a general increase in the temperature of the earth. And those gases that are responsible for trapping the heat on the earth's surface, that the one you call greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases. Now, when the heat gets trapped into our earth's atmosphere, it has some great consequences on all of us and our own activities on the earth. Because when the heat gets trapped into our atmosphere, the temperature of the earth increases in a phenomenon that is called global warming. That is, the temperature of the globe. The globe refers to earth. The temperature of the globe becomes warmer than before because it has now increased. You call that phenomenon global warming. An increase in the temperature of the earth is known as global warming. And greenhouse effect normally leads to global warming. Heat will be trapped and the earth will be warmed. You call that global warming. Now, what is the consequence of this global warming? Number one, when the earth becomes warm, the ice in the polar region, that's the Arctic and the Antarctica, the polar region of the earth, the ice there begins to melt. When the temperature of the earth increases. So the ice that are present in the Antarctica and the Arctic, which we call the polar regions, the temperature begins to melt the ice. And as the ice is melting, it's going to lead to rise in the sea level. It will lead to rise in sea level. The sea level will rise because the ice in the polar region are melting. So they wash to the sea and the level of the sea will rise. Now, when the sea level rises, what is going to cause is that there will be flooding in low-lying areas. That is, so that level of sea that has increased will lead to flooding in valleys. Low-lying areas become flooded with water. And then what will flooding cause at the end of the day? It will cause drought. It will cause drought. So flooding will cause drought at the end of the day. So all these things are caused by global warming. The melting of polar ice, rise in sea level, leading to flooding, and then leading to drought, and sometimes climate change, death of animals in some regions. So all these are the consequences of global warming. That is how carbon dioxide affects our atmosphere by trapping heat, causing global warming, and then causing all these things that you are seeing on your screen right now. Another oxide of carbon that is dangerous to our system is carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere not like carbon dioxide, but by incomplete combustion of fuel. Our generator fuel, our vehicle fuel, whenever there's incomplete combustion, carbon dioxide is always a product that is formed. Now, when carbon dioxide will be formed, when carbon dioxide is formed, it's a very dangerous gas, as you must have heard before, because when you inhale it inside, it's going to react with your blood and prevent the hemoglobin of the blood from carrying oxygen to the cells. So somebody who is poisoned with carbon dioxide will eventually die of suffocation, because the carbon dioxide will react irreversibly with the hemoglobin of the blood and prevent the blood from carrying its oxygen to all other parts of the body. Now, carbon 2 oxide is a local pollutant. That is, it only accumulates whenever there is no sufficient ventilation to oxidize it. But if there is sufficient ventilation to oxidize it, then the air will oxidize it to carbon 4 oxide, which will not be harmful to the human blood. And this is why you don't run generator in a room that is not ventilated, because it can kill everybody in the room in minutes. It's a very dangerous pollutant. Dangerous because it is colorless and also odorless. So you can be breathing it in without even knowing until the person will die. We've had stories of how people die in their room because the exhaust of generator is close to their window due to the injection of carbon 2 oxide into their room. So carbon 2 oxide is a very dangerous pollutant. It can accumulate where there is enough hold up on the road and there is a standstill, or accumulate when you are running generator inside an enclosed environment. Another air pollutant is oxides of sulphur. And there are two major oxides of sulphur. We have sulphur 4 oxide, SO2, sulphur 6 oxide, SO3. We also have one other compound of sulphur that is a major air pollutant. Is H2S, hydrogen sulfide, compound of sulphur. Now, how these gases affect the environment differ slightly, but they are all toxic. Now, the sulphur compound are present in fuel, in coal, in our petrol, and when you buy petrol that contains sulphur inside, as you are burning the petrol, the sulphur inside will be oxidized to sulphur 4 oxide, sulphur 2 oxide, and a little sulphur 4 oxide, sulphur 6 oxide, and a little amount of hydrogen sulfide will also be formed in the process. So this is how sulphur enters into the atmosphere whenever you run on petrol or you run on coal that contains sulphur compounds inside them. Now, the compounds of sulphur are very toxic because, number one, they can cause inflammation of the respiratory tract. You know, these gases are acidic, SO2. They can dissolve on the wall, on the mucous lining of the lung, and turn to acid, H2SO3. And when that happens, the mucous lining will be eaten up until there's a danger in the lung, cause inflammation. Another consequence of oxides of sulphur is that it leads to acid rain. When there's excess SO2 in the air, the SO2 itself is soluble in water. We all know that it's an acid anhydride. So this SO2 will dissolve in water to form H2, will dissolve in the rain. That's the vapor from the atmosphere, and form H2SO3. So that when the rain is now falling down, it will be falling down as an acid rain. And acid rain is very, very bad for our environment. For example, acid rain will cause the metal structure to corrode easily. Metal status, metal structures, metal machinery will corrode easily in the presence of acid rain. Acid rain can spoil your clothes when you continually expose your body to the rain over time. And H2S, hydrogen sulfide, causes blackening of paint. It makes the wall of paint to become black. That is how H2S affects the environment. But SO2, SO3, they dissolve in the rain to give us acid rain and corrode our metal structures. That is how oxides of sulphur actually contribute to environmental pollution. Finally, before we end this video, we'll talk about oxides of nitrogen, nitrogen oxides. Naturally, nitrogen does not react, but at high temperature and during lightning, the nitrogen of the air can combine with the oxygen of the air to give us nitrogen 2 oxide. During thunderstorm and lightning, that's when this reaction normally occur inside the air. So what will first of all happen is that nitrogen 2 oxide will be formed, and when that is formed, NO actually is very unstable. It quickly combines with oxygen. That's why the smell of NO is unknown today, because it quickly combines with oxygen and give us, here supposed to be NO, not NO2. So the NO that is formed from here combine with oxygen and give us NO2, nitrogen 4 oxide. Alright, now what happens when this NO2 is formed? It's also very soluble in water, very soluble in water, and you know what that will cause? It causes acid rain. NO2 is a mixed anhydride. Apart from the atmosphere, where nitrogen can combine with oxygen to form NO during thunderstorm, the exhaust pipe of vehicles are also hot enough to cause the hydrogen and the oxygen and the nitrogen within the environment of the exhaust pipe to react together. So those nitrogen and oxygen will react together and then give us nitrogen oxide, and then it later forms nitrogen 4 oxide. So that's why I said that some cars also release this through the exhaust pipe into the atmosphere. Now, the danger of NO2 is that when it dissolves in water, it forms acid rain. And you know what acid rain does? Number one, it causes corrosion of metal structure. It makes metal structure to corrode faster. And apart from that, it can blacken the wall of paint. It can, degrade the paint. Then NO2 can also form a respiratory problem when inhaled too much. So these are the disadvantages of NO2. Now, solid particles in the air. When you burn raw coal, when you burn firewood, when you burn tires, all this one will give a large quantity of smoke to the air, and this smoke contains solid particles that are suspended in gaseous medium, that is suspended inside air. There are generally particles of carbon that are suspended inside air. Now, tobacco smokes also contain tiny particles that are carcinogenic, that can cause cancer when they are inhaled. So apart from that, many industrial processes produce a lot of smoke into the atmosphere. Now, when you inhale this smoke, they can cause problem with our respiratory tract and sometimes cause cancer in people when you inhale too much of this particular solid particles in the air called smoke. So these are the way oxides of carbon, oxides of sulphur, the oxides of nitrogen and solid particles are dangerous to our environment. That is how they are dangerous. And in the next video, we'll look at the other 3 types of air pollutants and how they pollute our environment. Stay blessed.